This is how it's gonna be. This is what you think of me. It's going down like I told you. This is how it's gonna be. I'll be the last man standing here. I'm not going anywhere. It's going down like I told you. I'll be the last man standing here. I'm gonna rock you. I'm gonna rock you. I'm gonna rock you. I'll have you begging for mercy, begging for mercy. Oh, I'm dangerous. So dangerous.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Combat Misfits. Welcome to another great episode where we talk about combat sports going on around the world. But today we have a special treat for all you guys out there. We have former UFC fighter, former Ultimate Fighter contestant, and former middleweight title contender, Nate Quarry, on the podcast today. How are you doing today, Nate? Welcome to
I'm doing awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. And as always, I've got my co-host Chris with me. How are you doing today, sir?
What's going on, man? It feels good to be here, man. We took a week off, so it feels good to be back, you know?
Feels good to be back.
Fresh and ready to go. Pumped up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Work's been kicking my ass lately, so it's kind of, you know.
Work used to kick my ass too, so I know how that goes.
Oh, yeah. I see that pun there, yeah.
It does kick my ass, too. So how have you been, Nate? How are things?
I'm good, man. I just turned 50 last Friday, so I'm old as hell and have a 2-year-old toddler running around and a 4-month-old baby wiggling. So they're either going to keep me young or put me in an early grave. So things are good in this world.
That's
Right.
good. It's good to have you on the podcast. You know, it's an awesome opportunity, and we appreciate you, being here with us. So,
My pleasure.
you know, how have things been since, you retired, if you want to say that?
Things have been good. It'll be, any day now. I think my last fight was 38, so it'll be almost 12 years here. It may be tomorrow. Somebody look up when I fought Jorge Rivera, but I think it was March 30th, March 31st, 12 years ago. And that fight did not go my way. Jorge is a great competitor. I was a big fan of his, and until, of course, he busted me up. But I had to have a pretty major reconstructive surgery after that. The whole left side of my face, 13 screws, titanium mesh, putting everything back together. And then I've got degenerative disc disease, and I had another disc collapse, so I needed surgery there. So I had quite a while of time off and recovering. And frankly, I was really burned out. I've been fighting for 12 years, and the previous 8, this was my career. This is how I fed my family. And anything you do, no matter how much you love it, eventually it becomes a job as the years go by. And so I took quite a while off, let my body get healed up, met a nice lady that became my wife and started a family. And when we got married, it kind of refocused me again and made me think, well, I've got somebody around me that wants me to be here for a while, so I better start taking care of myself. And I'd been so busted up I've had 10 major surgeries. I've got 19 screws in my body. I've had things reattached over and over again. And I was on really high dosages of opioids just to get through the day. And I guess my back surgeries and all this and all that. And I got introduced to CBD and started taking that. And it was a life changer for me. I use this company, Receptor Naturals. And I went from 120 milligrams of OxyContin daily and for 10-325 Norco 2,400 milligrams of this nerve anti-inflammatory gabapentin, and the CBD got me off of all of that stuff. For me, it was just
Right.
phenomenal. It's for me, it works like a an anti-inflammatory,
Mhm.
so it keeps things lubed up. I'm still sore. I'm still working out quite a bit now, but it got me back in the gym again, and I started rolling again. So now I've been rolling since I got married about 4 years ago. So 4 years I've been back on the mat training, and I started with no gi jujitsu, which is,
Mhm.
there's three kinds of jujitsu. There's
Yep.
there's gi, there's no gi, and there's MMA jujitsu. MMA jujitsu is my specialty. No gi is a close second, and then gi, I'm still figuring a lot of things out with. So I got back in the gym, started training no gi, and having a lot of fun, and just training with a small group of guys. And my wife even asked me one day, do you want to go someplace bigger, some guys that'll challenge you a little bit more? And I said, no, no, I'm fine being the big fish in this tiny little
Yeah.
pond.
Right.
Well, then we had COVID hit, and the gym shut down and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
a buddy of mine who was at the time a two-stripe black belt said, hey, I need a training partner here. So why don't we get you a gi and you can come roll with me? So I started just doing gi jujitsu a couple years ago, just training with him. Then he brought in another two-stripe black belt, and just been getting beaten up in that world over and over again. We started our own club at an Elks club, believe it or not. We all became Elks members, and
Hmm.
6 days a week we take over the racquetball court, drop down a bunch of mats that we got from Century Martial Arts, which was awesome,
Mhm.
and just have our group out there. And it's just awesome for me that I've been in this world now for 26 years, over half my life. And it's
Mhm.
still exciting for me. I'm still learning new things. It's a great community of guys that I get to train with. And it was after I got back onto the mats and started rolling for a while, all of a sudden I had this kind of realization that for the first time in, 12, 13, 14 years, I was rolling, I was working out because I enjoyed it. I was training jujitsu because it was exciting for me and it was interesting and I loved the community. Whereas for so many years, it was my job. And I had to
Mhm.
think about it in that context and the highs and the lows that come with that. And now when I get on the mat, I get to tell the guys there, hey, man, I'm not being paid to be here. I'm pretty sure you're not being paid to be here. I'm not competing anytime soon. So why don't we just roll, try some new things, fail, have our failures pointed out, grow from there, do better, and keep expanding our game. And it's just
Right.
been awesome. So I can't complain. And like I said, we got two little ones running around the house now. My oldest daughter's 22, my son's
Mhm.
2, and my next daughter will be 5 months in a week or so.
Oh,
Wow.
And just chasing them around, and my boy Atticus just into everything all the time, seeing what he can
Mhm.
climb, seeing what he can jump off of, and the little girl is just wiggling and smiling. And this is this is a lot better life than I ever could have imagined for myself. So I consider myself to be pretty fortunate.
Nice. Like you said earlier, I have like a two-part question actually. So your CBD you just started doing, are you smoking it, inhaling it, or are you just taking the gummies? And the second part is when I used to train as well in jiu-jitsu, MMA and stuff. When I had gi on, one guy did a collar choke to me, and I didn't like that. So I was like, "No, I'm not doing gi no more. That kind of sucked. Like, I don't want that no more." Like, do you feel like as you train doing more gi, do you see like the different tactics to be used? Like, they hold your cuffling, so it ties your arm up. Collar choke, as I said earlier. Like, do you see like there's different things involved that you have to more watch out for more than MMA?
I'm sorry that that last part of the question cut out there. Let me answer the first part about
Uh,
the CBD, and then you can re-ask that.
sure.
The CBD I take is a tincture. And so I put it underneath my tongue and let it soak in, and it's just worked miracles for me. Unfortunately, I live in a
Mhm.
state as well where all forms of cannabis are legal, so that's been incredible. And I was never a smoker beforehand, but during my fighting career, any of that stuff, I'd seen a lot of negative effects throughout my life. And what I came to realize, it's just like alcohol. You can have a
Mhm.
nice glass of red wine with your steak dinner, or you can wake up in the morning and down a bottle of vodka. So for
Right.
me, in my recovery, especially, I have the CBD, and then I'm definitely not opposed to THC at night as well. And the kids
Mm,
are in bed, and I get to chill out and watch the new Disney Plus series Moon Knight. I'll be
of
smoking
course.
and relaxing and chilling out. And then your next question was what, please?
Um,
It was something about
you
ghee.
said right. You just got recently introduced, not introduced, but like you start wearing gi more for jujitsu. Like, do you feel like it's more difficult than with no gi because there's different variables in there where they can hold your cuffling, tie your arms up. Like I said earlier, they can do a collar choke on you. They use your gi against you. So do you feel like you prefer? Is that one of the reasons why you prefer no gi, or do you prefer gi because it's a little bit more different?
Well, everything's difficult to somebody when they first come into the world.
Mhm,
So my specialty is the no-gi,
mhm.
and I already know how to do that. I already know how
Right.
to excel at that. And I'm not the world's best. I still have huge holes in my games. I haven't kept up with the Danaher Death Squad and all their amazing ankle locks and all that kind of stuff. But no-gi, after doing it for so long, as exciting as that is and how much I enjoy it, it's one of those things where I'm only going to do no-gi when I need to feel good about myself. And somebody wants to
Right.
start on top of me, and I'm like, cool, I'll just get up and I'll reverse you, no problem. With
Mhm,
the gi, it presents so many new challenges to me and new things to learn, where the things that I've done for decades now, I just can't do. So
mhm.
those collar chokes that you're talking about, I get collar choked all the time,
Me
and
too. Sucks.
it's amazing. And I was actually saying this yesterday because we were drilling some guard passes and stuff, and I said if somebody was to walk in here and see me drilling, they'd be like, "Who's this idiot that
Mhm,
can't figure out his left knee and his right knee and how to knee slice and all this?" But then
mhm.
if they saw me rolling, they'd be like, "Huh." Because when I slow down and I bring my conscious mind into the scenario, I have to look at everything and see where everything goes. So I have and just like every other MMA fighter that's been doing it for a long time, or anybody that does anything that gets it into their subconscious, they
Mhm.
kind of just let the body roll and do their
Right.
thing. And gi jujitsu pulls me out of my subconscious, and now I have to think. Where is my
Mhm,
hand going to go? Oh, he's reaching for that collar. I've got to fight that. When I first put the gi back on, because it had been a long time, I remember specifically making the decision. I'm a fighter now. I do no gi. I'm not putting the gi on. I think that will be detrimental to my long term MMA career. Right or wrong, that was my decision. And
mhm.
now, when I first put the gi back on, guys are grabbing my sleeve and I'm just kind of looking at it. And I'm pulling my arm around and they're grabbing me by the collar and I'm kind of looking at them. That's what makes the gi jujitsu so exciting for me is that I have
Mhm.
such huge holes in my game, and I'm now a one stripe brown belt. I got my purple belt like 20 years ago, so I was a purple belt for over 20 years, and then putting the gi back on and just being able to figure out these problems because back in the day, my first workout 26 years ago when I walked into the gym, I did an hour and a half of kickboxing and an hour and a half of jujitsu. And I got my ass kicked so badly, especially in jujitsu, that I could not exist knowing that people that were so much smaller than me could so easily handle me, choke me out, break my arm, break my ankle. As I was leaving the gym, I said to myself, I'm going to keep coming back here so I can beat every one of your asses.
Mhm.
And to a lesser extent, that's how I feel now with gi jujitsu. I'm not quite as aggressive with what I want to accomplish. But as
Mhm.
I'm getting manhandled by the black belts or a brown belt that's giving me a hard time, or hell, even there's some purple belts and blue belts that have tapped me quite often because they have a slick way of putting on this collar choke. And I get
Yeah.
to watch them do that. And I say the same thing every time after I get tapped. Let me see that again. Where was your
Yeah.
hand? How was your
Mhm.
attack? What was I doing? Because I need
Mhm.
to slow the movie down. I got to watch it so I can kind of put that into the memory banks and overcome it. So for
Mhm.
me, and people that run on a treadmill, they don't go home excited to talk about their treadmill run. They're not looking up YouTube videos about how to get a better stride. What
Mhm.
should I be doing? How can I get the best treadmill run? No, you do the same thing over and over again. It's boring as hell.
Mhm.
With jujitsu, I'll be rolling with a a blue belt or a purple belt that I outweigh by 50 pounds. And they'll have this beautiful sweep that they're able to pull off. I'm like, holy shit, let me see that again. And I'll go back in
Right.
the position. And I'm just constantly learning through these things. And it reminded me again, that's why I showed up in the first place. Because I
Right.
saw the UFC on TV and I said, I'm going to go do that. I want to see what these guys are doing. Can I figure that out? I'm sitting there watching the TV, seeing Hoist Gracie choke people out with triangles. And it was just magical to me. How is he doing this with his legs? And I'm like looking on the TV, trying to get a better angle. I remember my roommate just going, dude, it's 2 dimensions on the TV. You literally can't get a better angle here. We gotta, you
Right.
gotta go train someplace.
So when I did it, excuse me, when I did it, like with gi, I think they take their time. It's more of like patience, more with gi, where you're like you're watching, you're waiting, and it's like a counter move almost with gi on. Do you feel like that's the same thing, where it's like a counter move? Like if you're moving your knee over your opponent's right knee, and then they counter it. Like, do you think they're waiting for a counter with gi? I
Well, I see that in both ways too, in gi and in no gi. And I've always heard that no gi is it's much better for the younger people. It's such a faster game and all this and that. Maybe it's just because I have so much more experience with no gi that I can flow in that world so much better. Whereas with the gi, it kind of slows everything down, but at the same time, the guard passing is ridiculously fast. Going from the knee slice over to the 10 pass, moving your hips over his hips into the Toriando pass, it gets just incredibly fast. And the main black belt that I'm training with now, Aaron Lona, is two-stripe black belt. He's got these big old childbearing hips and this big fat ass. So he starts putting this pressure on me and getting past my guard. And you can see my conditioning immediately, the energy level starts to go down. It's just incredible and exhausting. And yeah, it's just so much fun.
Do you think what was your well, this is from one of our comments, one of our people who watch the show. What fight in your career was your favorite?
I think my straight up probably favorite would be me and Tim Crater, where we went the distance. I wish I could have finished the fight, but it was such a phenomenal fight where it rose the stock of both of us. He completely dominated me in the first round, hit me with a good shot, dropped me, and immediately slapped a rear naked choke on me. And I had just lost to Damian Maya by rear naked choke. And I'm sitting there going, God, I can't lose by the same thing twice. And there's a great picture of him just locked up on my back, choking. You can see him straining and me reaching behind and pulling his arm off my head and scrambling to get up. And the second round starts with him using my head as a speed bag, just lighting me up. But he made the mistake of standing in front of me and I hit really hard.
Mhm.
So boom, dropped him. He jumps back up again, hits me a bunch more times. Boom, drop him again. Stay on top of him most of the second round. Third round starts the same way, just a speed bag and drop him, drop him. I think I dropped him 3 times in that round. But it was one of those lessons where the right person, it's harder to break the heart than it is the body because
Mhm.
he was not going to give up. His heart was not going to break, and I could beat on him all day. The fight ended with him throwing a head kick at me. That
Mhm.
that was probably just my favorite fight altogether that we just gave our all. But the most
Mhm.
important fight would be my comeback fight against Pete Sell, where I'd gone through my back surgery, I'd had a spinal fusion, I'd left Team Quest because the entire team had just changed. Couture had left the gym. Just the attitude there was not conducive to my development, or I felt anyone there at the team's development. And was going through a custody battle with my daughter. Was fighting for food money. I show up to Las Vegas and I've got $25,000 on my credit card debt because it had been 22 months since my previous fight. I lost to
Mhm.
Rich Franklin and then had back surgery just a few months later, and then had to have my spinal fusion, recovery, get back to a normal life, and then try to go into the elite status of being a professional MMA fighter who can go for 15 minutes. And Pete had been fighting, had been winning, been doing really well. Matt Serra was the champion. He was in his corner. He had really refocused his life on MMA and was doing really well. And here I am coming through this very difficult journey. and he beat the hell out of me for 2 solid rounds, dropping me in the second round with a big right hand. And I just remember thinking, man, it can't end like this, because if it does, all this work was for nothing. I was fighting for 10 and 10, 10,000 to show, 10,000 to win. So my best case scenario would be I'm going to win and go home $5,000 in credit card debt. Worst case scenario is I lose, I make 10 grand. The UFC says you're clearly not able to keep up with the fighters in the UFC now since your back surgery, lose all my sponsors, and then what? What do I do from there? How do I feed my little girl? But instead, I knocked him out in the third round. So I got my show money, I got my win bonus, we got fight of the night money, and then I got knockout of the night money as well. And it allowed me to get some long-term sponsors that were really life-changing for us. And that was probably the most important day in my life.
That's awesome, man. Also, too, do you think like the fighters now, like they're talking trash, they're getting each other's heads? I know it's a mental warfare kind of thing, but in your perspective, do you think that would help fighters win more fights? I guess, like just say for instance, like Connor, like he's a trash talking maniac. He likes to talk trash to everybody. Do you feel like that's something you would like to have in your side, where someone's talking trash about you to like give you more fuel to the fight, or you think just fighting in general just gives you enough fuel?
I never really cared if somebody talked trash about me. I fight best when I'm angry. I fight best when the crowd is booing me. So every time that I went someplace else to fight, and I'm fighting the hometown guy, I remember fighting in Richmond, Virginia, against their local champion, Knockupon, and I walk out to silence. And then all of a sudden you hear this, boo! And the whole crowd just erupts, just booing me. And when I got there, I asked the promoter, what can you tell me about this guy? And he just says, oh, he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He's an undefeated Muay Thai fighter, undefeated in MMA. Well, how does he win? Any way he wants to. Knockout, tap out. He's a tough guy. And I just looked at him and I said, well, I'm a pretty tough guy too. Should be a good fight.
Yeah.
And it went my way. It went well. So in some people, for them, a lot of them, they enjoy the trash talking because it helps to boost up their own ego. They say so much that they start to believe it. And once you have that belief in yourself, it can be tough to shut it down. But it's not always necessarily a very positive way to build your career and to build yourself up. If you can keep it in a positive way and keep good people around you, and you'll see these guys that have to be the loudmouth, the trash talker, they don't seem to really keep that good of a team around them. It kind of falters. You'll see new cornermen in there, new training partners, and then they always end up getting in trouble because they start to believe that persona and it's less of an act and becomes who they are. And then it crashes and burns. I would rather, I think the biggest trash talk I ever did was one time when I was fighting Rich Franklin. I said, he's got a weak jaw and I've got heavy hands. And I regretted it immediately when I said it. I'm sitting there giving the interview with the UFC and they're just hammering me. Say something about Rich. Say something about Rich. Give us something. Give us something. And I'm like, oh, he's a really tough competitor. No, give us something. He's been tough in his. And finally, I said, I've got heavy hands and he's got a weak chin. And you could see they just smiled and went, yeah, that's what we wanted. And they played that over and over and over again. And all that did was fuel up Rich to want to beat me up even more.
So
That's interesting. I didn't. Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
You think the UFC instigates most of that trash talk? Like, you think they?
Well, it's clear who the UFC wants to promote. They want to promote the trash talkers, but quite frankly, that's because they sell pay-per-views. People want to see the loudmouth get shut down, or they want to see if the loudmouth can actually do the job and win the fight. So it really works out well for them. It's not my style. I prefer just to see the fight. I prefer to see the action do the talking, but I must say I do enjoy seeing a loudmouth get beat down on occasion, and I will tune in for those fights to see them take that beating.
That's interesting. I think that shocked me. I didn't know they instigate. I thought it was just the persona of that individual just wants to do that just to get hype around themselves. I didn't know UFC encouraged it. Like, yeah, we want you to go rowdy. We want you to act like silly on stage. Like start a fight. That's
well,
crazy.
it's the easiest thing to sell. And
Yeah.
it's
Right.
what people understand. There's this bad blood, and then you'll see from some of the fighters, no, it's just their professional side trying to sell the sport, and then other fighters, they get kind of lost in that moment and push it. Or Jorge Masvidal getting in a straight fight with Colby.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
crazy. It's
not the
crazy.
best way to do things, and it's not good for career longevity.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that topic alone, like, do you think trash talking there's limits, or do you think there's unlimited trash talk? You can talk about whatever you want, just get into that person's head. I think, in my personal preference, like I think there's a limit. You don't talk about someone's kids or family. I think that's weird. Like, just talk about each other. What's your thought on that? Like, there's like a limit.
Well, so you're asking me to apply my moral standards to others. And so for
True.
my moral standard is no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to talk trash about somebody, especially not their kids, not their family, something like that. People that I had problems with, I always made it very clear in the cage.
Hmm.
Caleb Starnes, when I fought him. So after my back surgery, the UFC offered me Pete Sell, and I said, I want to fight Caleb Starnes. I think this will be a good fight for me, a good warm up. Introduce myself to the UFC again. So they called up Caleb and said, will you fight Nate? And Caleb told them, no, he's not good enough to fight me. He's not worthy. He just lost his last fight. I won mine. So tell him to get some wins under his belt and give me a call. So when the UFC called me back and told me that, I said, all right, cool. I'll fight Pete. It's going to be a tough fight. He's been working his ass up. It's going to be brutal, but I'll fight him and I'll win. And then I'm going to fight Caleb Starnes and I'm going to end his fucking career.
Right.
And that's what I did. And I didn't say a word about it until after the fight. And what happened in that fight? His career ended that night in the UFC. And so for me, I'm going to maintain my professionalness. I fight best when I'm angry. I'll
Yeah.
fight through a brick wall. I'll take the shots just to land the shots. So I don't need the hype to get me up and going.
Mhm.
If other people do, it's just something where again I can't put my morals and my standards on somebody else. I would, if my son or daughter became a fighter, I would coach them to be more like I was, to be respectful of opponents. But unfortunately, it sells so well. So many people love that trash talking. And I
Yeah, they
will
do.
never understand how we got from the quiet, dignified warrior, the samurai code, into the
Mhm.
loudmouth, trash talking fool who just seems to represent so many people that wish they could be like him, wish they could say those rude things. It's this weird thing that we have where being an asshole is somehow seen as being a strong person. And
Yeah.
that's really not the case. I could be
Mhm.
walking around all the time, pushing people around, wearing a skin tight shirt, being like, "Do you know who I am?" I'd be like, "Well, I'm an idiot. That's who I am."
Yeah.
I much prefer the quiet, strong person who can handle their business.
So
Totally agree.
would you say that the UFC nowadays is more towards the entertainment aspect rather than how it used to be when the rankings meant something, and they actually there was actually fighters like you who actually didn't have to talk trash but still went out there and proved who you were rather than
Well, there's still a lot of guys out there that are doing that, but as far as the UFC has been, so a lesson I learned a long time ago in trying to do business, I got handed a contract and I was so mad that the contract was so one-sided and I got nothing. I complained to my lawyer and my lawyer just laughed at me and said, "What don't you understand? Their job is to make money. Your job is to not be stupid." And I apply that to every encounter that I have. So when I think about the UFC, it's like, are they going to do the right thing? Are they going to pay the fighters more money because they're making billions of dollars? Are they going to have an independent group do their rankings? Are they going to make sure if you're the number one contender, you get your title shot? Or are they going to bring in well-known faces that are going to sell pay-per-views so they can make hundreds of millions of more dollars? We
Mhm.
know what the answer is to that. That's the way business is. I don't have any problem with the quote unquote freak show fights where guys with a name come in and see how good they can do and take a beating or not. My problem is when the fighters that have been earning their shots don't get taken care of, don't get their title shot, don't get their rankings, because for the UFC, it does become just a show. When I think of Conor McGregor fighting Dennis Seaver and jumping from, I think he was ranked round number 9 or 10 all the way up
Yep.
to a title shot. He jumped over Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yep.
think Frankie Edgar would have just taken his lunch, just over and
Yep.
over again, taking him down and pounding him out. Fought Chad Mendes. Chad took the fight on 2 weeks'
2
notice
weeks.
Yeah.
and completely manhandled him for 9 minutes and 50 seconds. Took 2 or 3
Yep.
punches on the arms, and Herb Dean called the fight. And
Yeah.
now we have this new champion who's from Ireland, who's going to bring over this whole new crowd of fans that are going to buy more pay-per-views. And it's clearly for the UFC, especially, but every promoter, they always have the same story. Man, I'm not making a dime on this show. I really can't pay you anymore. And it's like, oh, that's right. Yeah, you love the sport so much. You're just going broke with that private jet as you're flying around the world to put on these fights.
Yeah.
No, man, the fighters deserve their pay. They deserve their respect for the things that they've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy how the pay scale has hasn't transitioned to what it should be. Like Paddy Pimblett just recently fought, and he was paid $12,000 to show, $12,000 to win, and it was kind of like, I'm not going to fight any other notable, opponents if I don't get an increase in my contract. Like, and then the issue with Francis Ngannou, also, he's the heavyweight champion of the world. He wants to be paid more. So there's definitely issues, and I don't know how you could fix it. With the boxing, they have, the Muhammad Ali, the Ali Act, basically, where, it's more better of a ratio with the paying. And UFC.
So the Ali Act, what it did was it prevents a monopoly in the sport of boxing. You can't have require boxers to sign these long-term, unforgiving contracts that say you can't fight anywhere else. It requires an outside body to do the rankings. It says that a promoter cannot be a manager of a fighter as well. And we see the UFC trying to manage fighters, trying to set them up. Who they do the negotiating for their purses, they do the negotiating for their next fight. They don't have independent rankings, any of that stuff. The Ali Act has done a phenomenal job making boxing stay away from that monopoly. And that's why the UFC has fought the Ali Expansion Act so much. We had 63 signers to the Ali Expansion Act. We were ready to go to the House floor, get it signed into law. And then Donald Trump took office, and Trump is best buddies with Dana White. And they killed our bill in committee. And we've been fighting ever since to try and get it back so we can meet with Congress again, get the signatures on it, put it up for a vote, and really change the sport. And what that will do is, think about this prime example. So who's the heavyweight champion of the world?
Francis Ngannou.
Nobody knows. No. Has he fought everybody?
Yeah.
Has he fought the Bellator champ? Maybe he would beat their ass, but we won't know because they'll never fight. Mark Cuban wanted to answer that question. Who's the undisputed heavyweight MMA champion of the world? And at the time is it Fedor or is it Couture? So Fedor was willing to fight for Cuban. Cuban was like, Jesus, these MMA guys, the promoters are keeping 85 cents out of every dollar made and paying 15 cents to the 16 fighters on the card. Okay, I could take 50% and still make tens of millions of dollars on this show. Couture was in. He told the UFC, I'm retiring from the UFC. I'm going over to this new organization. And the UFC said, no. If we let you do that, then anytime any promoter shows up with a big paycheck, we're going to lose all of our fighters. And their big thing is we have 95% of the world's best fighters in every weight class. So they took Couture, Cuban, Fedor, they took it all to court and shut it down. If Mark Cuban, one of the richest men in history, can't put on a fight that everyone wants to see, what hope does any other organization have? So we have to win our lawsuit, and we have to pass the Ali Expansion Act if we really want to change things for the sport and make it more equitable to where the fighters are making life-changing money. Because right now, look at the NFL, a player's average career is 3.5 years long. but they get into the league. The worst player in the league that never even steps on the field is making around $500,000.
Yeah.
3.5 years later, they're what, 26 years old? They've got a few million in the bank. They've got a college degree. Now they can restart their life, see where they want to go with a good investment in themselves. In MMA, you just kind of keep dragging on, trying to reach that gold ring. And the next thing you know, you're 38, you're 39, you're 40. You haven't made it to that next level. And now you're just kind of a feeder. You're a scrub as the new guys are coming in, and you're looking towards retirement, and you don't have any marketable skills other than hand-to-hand combat. So what are you going to do? Become a security guard at a hospital or a bouncer at a bar? We need to change things so guys who have given their lives, their bodies to the sport have something to look back on and something to build for their future. And we're going to see this more and more. We're already seeing GoFundMe setups for these champions that can't walk, they need hip replacement. We're seeing CTE really hitting a lot of guys hard, and it's something that needs to change. We got to start taking care of these athletes.
So, how do we start to treat these athletes better? Like, it's obvious the UFC doesn't give a crap. You know, they're going in and just making the top dollar. And then you, like you said, you've got UFC fighters, you know, going on GoFundMe to heal injuries because they don't want to pay for, you know, the injuries that happen to them. It's like, I get the whole independent contractor kind of gig that the UFC is trying to initiate with these fighters, you know, where you're basically your own person, you promote yourself. But then does it lead people to talk trash? Because they see it working with Conor McGregor, right? They see him multi-millionaire right now, just from basically, you know, promoting himself, making the name he is today, and then getting into the whiskey business. Is that why we see more fighters doing that? Is because they see that you can make money doing that rather than the UFC taking care of its own fighters.
Well, yeah, you have to use the opportunity. And I think Dana White even said this once, fighting in the UFC is not a job, it's an opportunity. And what a slap to the face of every single fighter under contract. No, it is a job. You go to work. I quit my last real job, I would say, about 20 years ago, working in construction, to go on this dream of being an MMA fighter and choosing my own adventure type of thing. It would have been so much easier to stay working in construction. I was a shop foreman. I was a journeyman sign hanger. I was doing good. Had a house. I just wanted to try something new and exciting. It shouldn't be that difficult if you want to take that shot to do it, especially when you're making so much money for other people. The fighters are independent contractors, but that's kind of the con. That's what the UFC does. Calls the fighters independent contractors so they don't have to pay insurance, so they don't have to take care of them, so the fighters can't unionize and band together for change, but at the same time, force them to wear a uniform. Tell them when they're going to work, where they're going to work, who they're going to work with. They have to report their whereabouts 24/7, 365, have to random drug tests, same thing, all year long. Show me another company that hires independent contractors like that.
Yeah.
That's not the case. They're employees, but they're treating them in that way to save money for themselves. And it keeps the fighters from unionizing, as I mentioned. The key is going to be the Ali Expansion Act, which will change the whole thing. And it's the usual look and see who's resisting change. Is it the working class that are saying things are good as they are, or is it the ruling class that is saying, no, we don't need to change anything? Why would you want to try to go and change the laws when we'll take care of you? And actually, it's on you. If you were just better, you could be a champion as well. Sorry, that's not the case. Out of the 1,000 or so fighters in the UFC, not every single one is going to be champion. And not every pay-per-view just has one fight, a championship fight. No, there's another dozen fights on the card. All of them need to be compensated. Like I said, the worst player in baseball, basketball, football, they're all making around $500,000 a year for being the worst player in the league. But in the UFC, they do a very good job of blaming you being underpaid by your poor performance, not their greed. And it always amazes me to see working class people siding with the ruling class, thinking that the athletes are greedy, that we're selfish because we're trying to buy a house after fighting for 10 years in the UFC, or we're trying to save for college for our kids so they don't have to have such a rough lifestyle. Whereas the owners are blowing millions of dollars on nothing. It always amazes me that the working class doesn't say that's wrong. Oh,
Yeah.
if your boss was making $10 million a year and you were the one managing things and making things happen, you would demand a raise. You would be upset about that. Now imagine that your boss has monopolized the entire industry, so you can't go anywhere. It's things like that that need to change to give the fighters a chance. And all the Ali Expansion Act will really do is open up the free market to where the fighters now will be open to bidding. The UFC could still be the top dog. I hope that they are. They've done a phenomenal job with their marketing. Everybody knows who the UFC is. But at some point after the Ali Expansion Act passes, there's going to be a title fight and somebody's going to show up and say, "You're getting 500,000 for a heavyweight title fight?
Yeah.
Geez, I'll pay you $1 million." And somebody else is going to go, "Geez, this fight's going to generate 50 million. I'll pay you 10." And somebody else will show up and go, "Well, I'll give you 20. I'm fine making $30 million to sit in the front row and watch these fights." That's what capitalism is all about. That's what the free market is all about.
Yeah.
And that's where we're trying to get. Was I underpaid? I would say most likely, but the how you would truly answer that question is for the free market, for somebody to come in and say, "Oh, you're getting $10,000 to fight at the main event at the MGM Grand, uh, headlining a pay-per-view. Geez, I'll give you 15,000. I'll give you 100,000. I'll give you a half a million." It's the free market that decides these things.
So I have a quick question. Like, how was it on the Ultimate Fighter being on there, first contestants, all that, and having Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz be there as well? Was that real bad blood? And all those guys with nothing, like you're just there with no cell phone, no TV. And how was it being in there with all those guys?
So you might be thinking of a different season because it wasn't Chuck and Tito in my season. It was Chuck and Randy in my season.
Dead, Dave.
Are you
So,
good?
okay. So,
But I can answer all your questions beyond that. So
yeah.
it was rough. We had no idea what we were in for. I wasn't really a big reality show fan in the first place, and they kept you guessing all the time. We didn't even know 100% that we were going to fight when we got there. We assumed that we were going to, but when they made the announcement, they called everybody in and said, we're kind of breaking the fourth wall here. It's not done in reality shows where you tell the competitors what's going to happen, but some of you need to prepare for this. We're going to start having fights in a couple weeks. And Bobby Southworth was the heaviest one there out of his weight class. And so he was going to have to start immediately cutting weight. And he thought for sure there was not going to be any fights on the show whatsoever. So, and that's where you got this big episode where Dana White comes in, "Do you want to be a fucking fighter?" type of thing. And everybody on my team, on Randy's team, we were saying, "Yeah, that's why we're here, man. We're here to fight. We're not here to do these ridiculous little contests out in the desert." We didn't know how long the filming was going to go. I think we went over 7 weeks. We just never knew what to expect. Nobody did. The ones that were kind of writing the outline for the show, they had only done Survivor and things like that. And being in a household with 15 other guys, 16 guys total, and you never knew who you were going to be fighting from day to day, what the confrontation was going to be, and the stress of it, to where I don't want to be around that many people all the time anyways. But then you're there, there's no books, no TV, no music. all you have is alcohol and loud mouths and maybe some food if you're lucky. We went through their food budget, I think tenfold. But it was a very difficult time to get through, but it really made everything else possible with it made people interested in the competitors in the UFC. Because if I was to ask you what belts did Muhammad Ali have, you probably couldn't name any of them. I don't think many people could. But if I said, "Do you have an opinion on Ali? What about Ali versus Frazier?" Everybody who knows anything about boxing is going to say, "Oh man, Ali, he was the flashy fighter, the mouth. I forget his total name, but then Joe Frazier was kind of like the working class guy, just head down and moving forward, landing shots and throwing shots. Maybe you were for the Vietnam War, maybe you were against it. Everybody knew Ali, they knew Frazier, they had an opinion on them. And this is kind of where it gets back into kind of the loudmouth promotion of yourself and what a great job Ali was able to do by truly selling himself. And now you get into MMA. If you don't know the fighters, if you don't have an opinion of them, then why do you care if they're fighting? Well, now all of a sudden, and somebody pointed it out to me that my first words on the show were, "I'm here to make a better life for my daughter." And that's why I was there. So every single father could see, oh man, this guy really takes his responsibilities very seriously. He wants to change things. I wanted to be a competitor. When my team voted me to be team captain, I told them, and I had no desire to be team captain, but I told them, okay, if you want me to be captain, I'll be captain. I'm not going to try and con any of you. I'm not going to try and hold any of you back. I'm going to give you the best of what I've got. I'm going to expect the best out of you. I hope that I win, but let's just do this fair and square, and let's just see who's the best person on the other side. And for me, that was a big part of it. And I think getting to know these personalities and then seeing Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin have such a great throwdown in the fight, it changed the sport worldwide.
So to touch on that, so back in the day when you were in the Ultimate Fighter, there was a lot of viewership. Today's the Ultimate Fighter's kind of lacking something. I don't know. Maybe it is because it's more trash talk and they expect it like a TV drama show rather than a competition. What are your thoughts on how it's transitioned into what it is today?
Well, the number one thing with the Ultimate Fighter, if you look at season one, I think it was 8 of us or 9 of us were good enough to stay in the UFC. Bobby Southworth went over to Strikeforce and won a belt in Strikeforce. And we had the skills to back up everything that we were trying to do. Now you have full seasons that none of them are good enough to even stay in the UFC, let alone be contenders. We had Forrest Griffin become a champion. Kenny Florian fought for the title a few times. I fought for the title. I believe Diego Sanchez may have fought for the title as well. We were fighting before it was cool because it was just something that we were interested in, something that we wanted to do. We were willing to fight in a warehouse in front of 15 people for no money. It's just who we were as people. Second season, third season, they said, oh, this is a great way to get famous and get yourself known. And now here we are years and years later. Not only are they kind of viewing it from that reality show perspective, a lot of them, they just don't have the heart. They don't have the skill level to be in there. They've gone around the world and they found the best guys. My suggestion, I've been saying this for a long time, if the UFC wants to continue on with the Ultimate Fighter, it needs to be very much like the season that was, I think it was a throwback season or a second chance season. So take each weight class, take 2 weight classes, and choose the best people in that weight class to then go compete in the Ultimate Fighter. So you have the 8 top contenders at middleweight competing and fighting, and at the end of the show, then that winner then gets the fight for the world title. Now all of the fans are getting to know these fighters on a one-on-one basis and the trials and tribulations they're going to go through at the Ultimate Fighter house. And there's enough weight classes and men and women competitors that they could do this for a few years. Now you're going to have a whole roster in the UFC of fighters that the fans know who they are. They've been following them. They know their story, and they get a chance to fight for the title. the pay-per-view numbers would go up, the fan appreciation would go up. And after you've done that, then go back to the world and do the Ultimate Fighter again with the top unsigned talent and see who's good enough to make it into the UFC. And now all of a sudden you see guys that had been sitting out for 5 years fighting on the small cards that are now good enough to make it into the UFC and find some success.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that may be an opportunity to get them more ratings, you know.
Mhm.
So I have another question. All right. Back in 2015, you came out of retirement for a charity fight, an exhibition fight against Jacob Beckman. Please let the viewers know what that was about and, you know, what made you do that, you know.
Well, the only thing that would get me off the couch would be another shot at UFC gold. So I figured if you're putting that on the line, I'll take a shot. But I think I was traveling and I saw that they were looking for an opponent for this young man, Jacob Beckman. And he'd been training in MMA for a while. And his goal was to fight in MMA. But everybody said, sorry, Jacob, that's not for you. You have Down syndrome. So you're just not going to be able to follow this dream. And when I heard that, I didn't much care for that because I've been told my entire life who I'm supposed to be and what dreams I can and can't have and what little slot I'm supposed to fit into. And I figured that I've had so many incredible moments in my life and been able to really pursue my dreams. If I can help someone else pursue theirs, then that's the least that I can do. And with his mother as well, I can't imagine now being a father of 3 kids, having a special needs kid of Down syndrome or some kind of disability. That what an incredible, I don't want to say burden, but challenging situation that would be. And Jacob's mother was telling me about when he was little, they were traveling and they're at a hotel and they get in the hot tub, and one by one, all the parents take their kids out of the hot tub. And so much of it is, well, they don't know someone with Down syndrome or they don't know a special needs person. So it makes them uncomfortable. Doing something like this with Jacob gave us an opportunity to kind of expose who he is to the world, give him an opportunity to fulfill his dreams, give his mother an opportunity to know that no, people do care about what you're going through. And if we can help in some way, we'll be there. And so Chael was willing to put on the show at the Roseland Theater here in Portland, where I fought myself 20 some years ago, 25 years ago, something like that. And it was just awesome. First fight of the night before the whole card started, the place was packed to the rafters. And Jacob had been training hard, and I made sure I told his mother my priority number one is to make sure that Jacob is safe, that nothing happens to him. My second priority, way down the line, is that I'm safe. And then after that, let's just see what happens. And so we had a great first round with a lot of movement. And the second round came out. He was swinging harder in the second round than the first. Shoots a takedown in on me. It falls back for an ankle lock, and I had to tap. But it was an opportunity really for me to just show some kindness to somebody else. And from my perspective, it really wasn't that big of a deal from my effort. It was just something for Jacob and his family and that community to hopefully see that, yeah, we're trying to do the best we can to help people out there, and hopefully others can see this and understand. Now that I've met Jacob and his family, when I see other people with Down syndrome, I know a little bit more about their journey, and I'm not uncomfortable because I know more about that, and I know how kind and friendly Jacob was and his family was. And if I can show kindness to anyone like that, it's really expanding my understanding of that world. And if I could do that to help others, then that's the least I could do.
That's very awesome that you did that for Jacob. You know, that shows what fighters really are, because everybody thinks that fighters are just this big bad guy that, you know, rough and tough. But deep down, most of the fighters, majority of the fighters actually, you know, they have really good hearts and they do a lot for charities, like Dustin Poirier also. Hey, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Well,
Camera.
to your point, yeah, and there's a difference. To me, there's violence and there's sportsmanship. And to me, violence is combined a lot with the emotion of it. And as a professional, as a fighter, I'm not trying to necessarily hurt my opponent. I'm trying to win in the competition. And there's a huge difference. And I've proven 22 times that I've stepped into the cage. I will stand in front of a bad man, and he's going to knock me out, or I'm going to knock him out. And out on the street, I don't need to prove anything. And that's the big difference. I was making an appearance someplace at some small bar back east, and one of the waitresses came up to me and said, "Oh, there's just two local tough guys that are looking to jump you and kind of make a name for themselves. So just beware." And I thought to myself, well, I don't want that to happen. So I walked right up to the two of them and I said, "Whoa, you dudes are huge. You must be the local strongman here. I'm going to walk all the way around you as I go to the bathroom." And I gave them their props, and they kind of smiled to each other, and they felt good about themselves. And I felt good about myself. I wasn't getting punched in the face for free. It's having that inner confidence. These loud people on the street that have to make sure everybody knows how tough they are, they're really just trying to tell themselves. And it always comes down, I hate to say this, my wife gets tired of hearing me say this, it's always daddy issues. I'm sorry your daddy didn't hug you. I'm sorry that he didn't tell you he loved you enough. He should have. Then maybe you would believe it yourself and you wouldn't have to go out and prove it on the streets. I came from that same mentality as well. My father didn't tell me he loved me. It was not a pleasant upbringing, and I was very angry. But I found MMA, and that allowed me to get that out. It allowed me to build my own self-esteem, my own belief in myself and my skills, to where, and I was thinking about this with the altercation between Will Smith and Chris Rock. I was thinking about how when I was a young man, somebody had insulted my girlfriend at the time, and I said, "Hey, that's not appropriate." And he continued talking trash, and so I smacked him. And
Yeah.
it was a lot harder shot than Will Smith delivered. And a few years ago in my 40s, I was at a bar with my wife, and somebody else was talking trash, and it became a situation where I could see that things weren't going to go well. So I grabbed my wife and we left, because as an adult, I realize I don't have anything to prove here to these people. If somebody wants to talk trash about me or even about my wife, it's much better for us to go home, go someplace else, let that man be a fool all on his own. I don't need to smack somebody and make the situation much worse. And what's that going to prove? That I can beat up some untrained guy in a bar? How does that help my standard? How does that help my self-respect? Is that the kind of man I want to be for my kids to look up to? So for me, it's having that confidence in who I am as a man. Like at the gym the other day, at the end of jujitsu practice, I'm taking off my gi pants, and I almost trip and fall on my ass. And one of the guys says, "Oh man, I wish I had that on camera. Former UFC contender can't take off pants without falling on his head." And I looked at him and I said, "Man, there's way more embarrassing stuff with me online than this will ever be. I'm
That's
more than fine with that."
yeah.
Because again, that has nothing to do with who I am as a man and how I take care of my family, my morals, my integrity. And that's just what we're lacking so much, that people are so confused. They think that being rude, being an asshole, that's strength, when in actuality that's weakness. I don't need to run around and tell everybody, "Hey, did you know I can beat your ass? Hey, did you know that I fought for the world title?" That's just not my thing. The only time I ever get involved with anything like that is if I see somebody else that might need some kind of assistance. Otherwise, man, do your thing. If I'm out and about, I'm just here to have fun and relax, and getting punched in the face for free by strangers is not on that list.
Yeah. So one quick question. We noticed, I actually reached out and tried to buy your new comic book, Zombie Cage Fighter, and it's sold out. Congratulations, man. That was very awesome. What made you decide to go that route and make a comic book?
I'm an old school nerd, man. Growing up, I was not allowed to participate in any sports, have any friends outside of the religion. So it was a pretty lonely childhood. I would escape into the world of Marvel comic books. Incredible Hulk was always my favorite character. I love the X-Men and Spider-Man, all that kind of stuff. and kind of went away from it in my teenage years and then found it again in my early 20s and became friends with comic book store owners and artists and creators and just people passionate about their art, much like I'm passionate about my art form. And so when it came time to tell my story, I wanted to do it with a little bit of flair. So I wrote about a lot of my experiences in the MMA world. And at the time, as a single father, I just threw in zombies. And it started off with me just kind of talking about this thing and throwing out ideas. And I made an appearance on G4's Attack of the Show and told them right now I'm working on this new thing called Zombie Cage Fighter. And the rules are for humans, no biting, for zombies, mostly biting. And the producer came up to me and he said, I love that idea. I want to see everything you've got. Make me a pitch. So I shook his hand. I looked him in the eye and I said, all right, well, let me go home and I'll put it together and I'll come back down and pitch it to you. Because I didn't have anything. I just had an idea. So I went home, sat at my computer and just started typing. I had the beginning, I had the end figured out and just kind of put it down, showed it to some people smarter than I am in that world. They gave me some notes and ended up with what is the Zombie Cage Fighter story about a fighter at the end of his career that has nothing left to turn to. He wasn't building for the future. He's a single father. He's got a little girl. And if it means that he can take care of his little girl, then sure, he'll go fight the undead in a cage, even if that means that he has to fight for his life. And I did the first issue in 2012, just a one-shot issue. And the whole goal was, does anyone else think this is cool besides me? And what I heard from everybody was, when's the next issue coming out?
Yes.
So I had the whole story done. Now I just had to put the team together and create this into the graphic novel that it is today. And then we set up a GoFundMe to fund the creation of the graphic novel. The good news is, because the world shut down right at the end of the GoFundMe, I'm sitting on 3,000 copies of the graphic novel. They're right here in my living room. As the world opens up and the Comic Cons become back to life again, I'll be selling them there. Right now, we're rebooting the website. Hopefully, the store will be up soon, and then everybody can go and buy their own copy, and I'll sign every one that everybody wants to. But I got to tell you, I love the book, and I would be honest if it sucked. I would be the first to tell you, it's okay.
I'm
But
interested.
it's
I saw on the website that it said it was sold out. So I got
yeah, and that's how we have the website set up until we get it up and running again. And then we can enter in the quantity.
I'd be interested in a copy, man.
But the team that came together for it, so it's very different to have a 22-page short story and then to write that out into a 6-issue comic book series. So I sat down with some great comic book writers who helped me turn that into the story that it is now. And then found some incredible artists, Alex Horley, to do the cover for it. It's an actual painting that's in my house. The interior artist, all the shirts that I've had done over and over again. I've just gotten incredibly lucky to find these artists to work with. And even the very first Zombie Cage Fighter shirt that I ever did, when I was 13 years old, there was this big surfing revolution where you had OP, Ocean Pacific, TNC Surf. You had Gotcha. You had all these brands that were doing surfing shirts. Well, I grew up in Salem, Oregon. I'd never even seen a warm ocean. But these surfing shirts were the coolest thing. In Town and Country Surf, they had this surfing gorilla and this caveman, stuff that was just mind-blowing to me. Well, like 12 years ago or so, I'm thinking to myself, I want to find one of those old cool shirts online. Well, at the time, you couldn't find them. They were $80 used, torn to shreds. But I find the original artist and I contact him, and he ends up making my first Zombie Cage Fighter shirt in his very easy to spot style. And it's such a dream come true to me to have these artists taking my words, my ideas, bringing them to life. Another name is Randy Bowen. If you go into any comic book store around the world, there's going to be a Randy Bowen statue there of an Incredible Hulk or Spider-Man, something like that. We've become friends, and he did my very own Zombie Cage Fighter statue, which is just a dream come true to have something like that in my hands that came from my brain.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when can we see these copies go on that website?
I've been asking that same question for quite a while. Hopefully we can get the website up and running very, very soon. I've set the goal for ASAP. And so hopefully, I will be all over my social media, letting everybody know that we finally got it up. Get your copy now. And something I don't think I've really shared with anybody. I don't know if I've spoken about this publicly. I'm currently in talks with a major studio to do a Zombie Cage Fighter animation series.
Whoa.
When I say major studio, I'm not blowing smoke.
That
And
would
so and I've been approving artwork. I did some voiceover for myself, so they're putting together a short animation that they'll then take out and pitch to the networks and things like that. But again, this is one of those things where I want to go back to my 12, 13-year-old self and go, hey, buddy, as bad as things are right now, they're going to go way, way good, way better than you ever could have imagined. From fighting for the world title in UFC to having my own t-shirt line with Zombie Cage Fighter to an amazing wife and my family and all that. And it was always, and the family logo was Fortitudine Vincimus, by endurance we conquer. By working through the tough times and keeping our eyes on the prize, we've made things turn around and go really well for us. And it's taken a lot of beatings. It's been a lot of work, but it's really been worthwhile.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate your time. I know it is very valuable. We appreciate you being on this show.
Yeah, man, it was so awesome to have you on here, man.
Thank
Oh, dude, it was like I was geeking a little too much in the beginning. I was like, oh my god, Nate. I started geeking a little bit, so I had to control myself.
No problem. I appreciate it.
Do you have any plugs that you want to add to the show?
Geez, keep an eye on zombiecagefighter.com. Once we get the store up and running, that's where everybody will be able to get their shirts, get their comics. The CBD that I use is from Receptor Naturals. I'm not a paid spokesman for them. They give me product. I don't have any signed deal. I just want to tell people how phenomenal that their product is, that it was life-changing for me. Without their tincture, I'd probably still be on opioids. It was just, and I was not one of those guys, because I'd heard about the benefits of cannabis and CBD for a long time. I was like, how good can it really be? And then I started taking it, and it was life-changing for me, and something I partake of every single day to keep my 50-year-old body that's been doing this for over half a lifetime. I still get on the mat and I still roll hard with young guys with black belts. I'm still working out and getting better. It's possible. And especially the way things are changing now. My diet is very clean, lots of fruits or lots of vegetables and proteins, not as many carbs as I used to do. It's just staying focused on the longevity of it. So I'll be able to chase my kids around. And I don't want to be the guy that's obviously the crippled fighter trying to chase their kids around the yard. And that's about it. My Twitter handle, I think, is Nate Quarry. Don't follow me. You won't enjoy it. It's not pleasant. All I do is bitch and complain about world events. So you've been warned. If you do want to follow me on there, I'm sorry. I call it like I see it. Anybody that wants to have a conversation with me about any of my views, I'm more than happy to do so. Because if I'm wrong, just bring the receipts and I will change my mind. But all too often, it's the opposite, where I see things as they are, and it kind of amazes me that other people don't, when it's so black and white. So don't follow me on Twitter at Nate Quarry. You'll probably regret it. But do go to zombiecagefighter.com and buy shirts and books, really, just so I can know that my story is out there and other people are enjoying it.
All right. For everybody watching, zombiecagefighter.com. We'll be anticipating the release of these comic books, because I'm interested, man. It looks super cool. And I know Chris himself is deep into comic books himself. So we look forward to it. Thank you. We appreciate all the time that you gave us today. If you ever want to hop on the show again, man, feel free. We would be honored. We would be honored, because there's so many more questions I could ask you about your career and, a lot of different questions. And I could talk to you for hours. Valuable, man. You got a family. It's been awesome to talk to you. Thank you for your time, man. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
So that was Nate Quarry on the podcast, man.
Dude, it was incredible to have him on, man. Holy crap. It was awesome.
It was a long time, man. It was good.
From Combat Misfits to everybody, man, we are out of time. We're almost at 1:10. I know, like, it went over schedule, but, man, we had a blast talking to Nate, man. Holy crap. That was so nice to talk to him, man.
It was so good, man. It was so good. So for me and Chris, go follow us on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell for all notifications so you're notified when we go live the next time. There's no fights this weekend, but that pay-per-view is ramping up, baby. Alexander Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie, Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling, the rematch. That will be an exciting fight. We'll be live next Wednesday getting you hyped for that fight. And we'll be live whenever there's breaking news. So stay tuned. Don't forget, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Combat Misfits. That's where it's at.
Also, want to give a good shout out to Joey Image, man. That was awesome. Thank you for helping us get Nate Quarry on.
Yes.
That was awesome. Thank you, Joe. Man, much appreciated that we came and thank you enough. We appreciate that time.
Thank you for the opportunity, Joey. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Combat Misfits. Have a good night, everybody.
This is how it's gonna be. This is what you think of me. It's going down like I told you. This is how it's gonna be. I'll be the last man standing here. I'm not going anywhere. It's going down like I told you. I'll be the last man standing here. I'm gonna rock you. I'm gonna rock you. I'm gonna rock you. I'll have you begging for mercy, oh.